Smart English Studio.
Have you ever met someone from another country and wanted to ask about their culture, their food, their family, or their daily life, but you didn't know how to start the conversation?
Maybe you wanted to sound friendly and curious, but you were afraid of asking the wrong question.
Today, we'll practice a natural English conversation between Eva and Minh, a new friend from Vietnam. You'll hear useful phrases for meeting someone new, asking polite questions, comparing cultures, talking about food, family, work, coffee, city life, and learning English.
Listen carefully, repeat the useful phrases, and try to imagine that you are part of this conversation. Let's begin.
Hi, you must be Minh, right? I'm Eva. It's so nice to meet you. I've heard a little bit about you from our friend Daniel, but it's always nicer to meet someone face to face.
Hi, Eva. Yes, I'm Min. It's really nice to meet you too. Daniel told me about your English podcast, so I was a little nervous before coming here. I thought, oh no, I hope I don't forget all my English as soon as the microphone is on.
Please don't worry. That happens to so many learners. The moment they see a microphone, a camera, or a native speaker, their brain suddenly says, "Goodbye, English."
Exactly. I can understand English videos, I can read articles, and I can write messages, but speaking feels different. When I speak, I have to think about grammar, pronunciation, vocabulary, and confidence all at the same time.
That is such a real problem. And that's why this lesson is not about perfect English. It's about real conversation, useful phrases, and feeling more relaxed when you speak.
That makes me feel better. I think many learners from Vietnam feel the same. We study English for years, but sometimes we don't get enough chances to actually speak.
That's a very important point. Many learners know English in their head, but they need more practice using English in real situations.
Yes, sometimes I know the answer, but I still need a few seconds to organize my thoughts.
And that is completely normal. Even in your first language, you sometimes need time to think.
True, but in English, those few seconds can feel very long.
They can, but silence is not a disaster. You can use natural phrases like, "let me think," "that's a good question," or "how can I explain this?" These phrases give you time.
That's useful. I like how can I explain this? It sounds natural and gives me a moment to think.
Exactly. So let's start with a simple question. Minh, where are you from originally?
I'm from Vietnam. I grew up near Hanoi in the north of Vietnam, but I've also spent time in Ho Chi Minh City, which is in the south. They both feel very different to me.
That's interesting. I've seen pictures of Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City, and they both look very lively. How would you describe Hanoi?
Hanoi has a lot of history and character. The streets can be busy, but there are also peaceful lakes, old buildings, small cafes, street food stalls, and narrow streets full of motorbikes. It feels traditional, but also modern in many ways.
That sounds beautiful. And what about Ho Chi Minh City?
Ho Chi Minh City feels faster and more energetic. It's very busy, very modern, and full of people working, studying, building businesses, and moving quickly. It feels like a city that never really stops.
I like that description. A city that never really stops. Listeners, that's a useful phrase. If a city is always busy and active, you can say, "it feels like a city that never stops."
Yes, you can say London feels like a city that never stops, or Ho Chi Minh City feels like a city that never stops.
That's a great example. So, when you came to the UK, what was one of the first cultural differences you noticed?
The first thing I noticed was how quiet some places can be. In Vietnam, especially in busy areas, there is always sound. Motorbikes, street sellers, people talking, food being cooked, music from shops, and families sitting outside. In the UK, some streets feel very calm.
That's true. In many British towns, especially smaller towns, the streets can become very quiet in the evening.
Yes, at first I thought, where is everyone?
That's so funny. In the UK, many people go home, close the door, and enjoy their private space.
Yes, I noticed that. In Vietnam, people also value family and home, of course, but daily life can feel more public. You see people eating outside, drinking coffee, sitting on small chairs, talking with neighbors, or meeting friends after work.
I love that. It sounds very social.
It is. Food and coffee are big parts of social life. You don't always need a big plan. Sometimes you just say, let's get coffee, and then you talk for an hour.
That sounds very similar to British tea culture. In Britain, tea is a way to pause, talk, and sometimes solve every problem in life.
In Vietnam, coffee can do that.
So in Britain, tea solves problems. In Vietnam, coffee solves problems.
Exactly.
Now, Vietnamese coffee is famous. If someone has never tried it before, how would you describe it?
Vietnamese coffee is usually strong, rich, and often sweet. Many people know Vietnamese iced coffee with condensed milk. It's called café soda. It can be very refreshing, especially when the weather is hot.
That sounds amazing. So it's stronger than the coffee many people drink in the UK?
Yes, it can be stronger, and the condensed milk makes it sweet and creamy. But there are many styles. Some people drink black coffee, some drink iced coffee, some like egg coffee, especially in Hanoi.
Egg coffee? That sounds unusual to British ears.
Yes, many people react like that, but it's actually delicious. It's creamy, sweet, and almost like dessert.
So if I visit Vietnam, I should try egg coffee.
Definitely, but maybe don't judge it before you try it.
That's good advice for many things in life.
Very true.
Listeners, here is a useful phrase. Don't judge it before you try it. You can use this when talking about food, music, places, or new experiences.
For example, don't judge Vietnamese egg coffee before you try it.
Exactly. Now let's talk about food. Vietnamese food is also very popular around the world. What dish would you recommend to someone who is trying Vietnamese food for the first time?
I would probably recommend pho. It's a noodle soup with broth, herbs, and usually beef or chicken. It's warm, comforting, and very popular. But I would also recommend bánh mi, which is a Vietnamese sandwich, and fresh spring rolls.
I've heard of pho and bánh mi. They're becoming quite popular in the UK too.
Yes, but like many foods, the tastes can be different outside the country. In Vietnam, food often depends on the region, the family, and even the street stall. The same dish can taste slightly different from place to place.
That's interesting. It's the same with many cultures. People outside a country sometimes think the food is one simple thing, but actually there are many regional differences.
Exactly. Northern Vietnamese food, Central Vietnamese food, and Southern Vietnamese food can be quite different. Some dishes are lighter, some are sweeter, some are spicier, and some are more complex.
That's a useful sentence for learners. It depends on the region. You can use it when talking about food, accents, traditions, or lifestyle.
Yes. For example, Vietnamese food can be different depending on the region.
Very natural. Now, if someone meets you and wants to ask about Vietnamese culture, what questions feel polite?
I think polite questions are open and respectful. For example, what is your hometown like? What food do you recommend? What do you miss most about Vietnam? What is daily life like where you're from?
Those are great questions. They invite a real answer.
Yes, but questions like, is Vietnam poor? Or do all Vietnamese people eat this? Can feel too general or uncomfortable.
That's a really good point. It's better to ask from curiosity, not from stereotypes.
Exactly. You can say, in your experience, or where you're from. That sounds much more respectful.
Those are very useful phrases, in your experience and where you're from. For example, in your experience, what is family life like in Vietnam? Or where you're from, what do people usually eat for breakfast?
Yes, that sounds friendly and natural.
Speaking of family life, what is family life like in Vietnam, in your experience?
In my experience, family is very important. Many people are close to their parents, grandparents, siblings, cousins, and extended family. Family members often help each other, give advice, and stay involved in each other's lives.
That sounds warm, but maybe sometimes intense.
Yes, exactly. It can be very warm, but sometimes it can also feel like everyone has an opinion about your life.
That sounds familiar. I think many cultures have that.
Yes. Someone might ask, "Are you eating enough? Are you working too much? When will you visit? Do you have a plan for your future?" It comes from love, but sometimes you want to say, "Please, let me breathe."
That is very relatable. In Britain, people often value independence and personal space. Family is still important, of course, but people may not ask so many personal questions, especially in public.
Yes, I noticed that. British people can be very polite, but sometimes they're more private. In Vietnam, people can ask direct questions because they feel close to you.
That's a good cultural difference, privacy and personal space. In English, you can say, people tend to be more private, or people are more open with personal questions.
Those phrases are useful. People tend to be sounds careful. It doesn't sound like you are saying everyone is the same.
Exactly. When we talk about culture, it's better to use soft language. Often, usually, sometimes, in my experience, where I'm from. Let's talk about respect. In many Asian cultures, respect for older people is very important. Is that true in Vietnam?
Yes, respect for older people is very important. The way you speak to someone can change depending on their age and relationship to you. In Vietnamese, pronouns are connected to age and family roles, so you often show respect through language itself.
That's fascinating. In English, we mostly use you for everyone, but in Vietnamese, the language shows the relationship more clearly.
Yes, that can make Vietnamese feel very rich, but it can also be difficult for learners of Vietnamese. You need to know how to address someone properly.
That's so interesting. In British English, respect is often shown through polite phrases like could you, would you mind, please, thank you, and softer language.
So in English, politeness is often in the phrase. In Vietnamese, it can also be in the word you choose for the person.
Exactly. That's a great comparison.
I think learning the language also means learning how people show respect.
That is a beautiful sentence. Learning a language also means learning how people show respect.
Yes, grammar is important, but culture is also part of communication.
Absolutely. Now, let's talk about daily life. What does a normal day look like for many people in Vietnam?
It depends on the person, of course, but many people start the day early. In some places, the streets are already busy in the morning. People go to work, students go to school, street food sellers prepare breakfast, and coffee shops open early.
So, morning life starts quite early.
Yes, breakfast outside is very common. People might eat pho, bánh mì, sticky rice, or other dishes before work or school. It can be quick, cheap, and delicious.
That sounds very different from the UK, where many people have toast, cereal, porridge, or just coffee at home.
Yes, in Vietnam, eating out can be very normal and affordable. In the UK, eating out often feels more expensive.
That's true. A coffee and a sandwich in the UK can sometimes feel like a financial decision.
Yes, I noticed that. In Vietnam, street food can be part of everyday life, not only a special treat.
That's a useful phrase, part of everyday life. For example, street food is part of everyday life in many places.
Exactly.
Now, what about motorbikes? Many people associate Vietnam with motorbikes. Is that accurate?
Yes, motorbikes are very common, especially in cities. They are convenient, flexible, and useful in busy streets. But for visitors, traffic can look scary at first.
I can imagine. I've seen videos of people crossing the road in Vietnam, and it looks like you need courage.
Yes, but there is a rhythm to it. You walk carefully, slowly, and predictably. You don't suddenly run. The traffic moves around you.
That sounds like a life metaphor.
Maybe it is.
Walk carefully, don't panic, and keep going.
Exactly. That's good advice for learning English, too.
Very true. Don't panic, keep going.
And don't stop in the middle of the sentence.
That's perfect. Now, let's talk about festivals. What Vietnamese celebration would you explain to someone who knows almost nothing about Vietnam?
I would talk about Tet, the Vietnamese Lunar New Year. It's one of the most important celebrations in Vietnam. Families clean and decorate their homes, prepare special food, visit relatives, remember ancestors, give lucky money to children, and hope for a good new year.
That sounds very meaningful. It has family, food, tradition, and a fresh start.
Yes, Tet can be joyful, but also busy. People travel to see family, cook a lot, clean the house, buy flowers, and prepare everything. It's beautiful, but sometimes exhausting too.
That sounds like many big celebrations. In the UK, Christmas can feel similar: beautiful, emotional, full of food, and also a little stressful.
Yes, I think many cultures have that kind of celebration. Different traditions, but the same feeling. Family, memory, food, hope, and sometimes too much preparation.
That's a lovely comparison. Listeners, you can say the traditions are different, but the feeling is similar.
That's a very useful sentence.
Now, Min, what is something people sometimes misunderstand about Vietnam?
Maybe people sometimes know only a few images: motorbikes, street food, rice fields, or old history. But Vietnam is much more than that. It is modern, creative, young, hardworking, and changing quickly. There are big cities, technology, fashion, cafes, universities, businesses, and many different lifestyles.
That's a strong answer. No country is only one story.
Exactly. Vietnam has history, but it also has a future. It has tradition, but it also has modern life.
I love that sentence. Vietnam has history, but it also has a future.
Thank you. I think that is true for many countries.
Definitely. Now, let's bring this back to English learners. What helped you improve your English speaking?
Listening helped me a lot. I listened to podcasts, YouTube videos, conversations, and simple English content. But listening alone was not enough. I had to start speaking, even when I made mistakes.
That's so important. Listening gives you input, but speaking gives you confidence.
Yes, at first, I wanted every sentence to be perfect, but then I realized that real conversation is not perfect. Even fluent speakers pause, repeat words, correct themselves, and say things in a simple way.
Exactly. Natural speech is not like a grammar textbook.
Yes, a grammar textbook never says, "Wait, how can I explain this?"
That's true, but real people say that all the time.
Exactly. So I started using simple phrases to help me continue. Let me think, what I mean is, in my experience, for example, and it depends.
Those are excellent conversation tools. They help you sound natural even if your English is not perfect.
Yes, they give you structure.
What advice would you give to someone from Vietnam or from any country who wants to speak English more confidently?
I would say, don't wait until you feel ready. Start with small conversations. Say one sentence, then two sentences, then a short story. Talk about your food, your city, your family, your daily life. These topics are personal, so they help you remember the words.
That is very good advice. Personal topics are easier to remember because they connect to your life.
Exactly. If you learn English only from random sentences, you may forget them. But if you learn how to talk about your real life, the words stay with you.
That's perfect for this series. We want learners to talk about their country, their culture, their daily life, and their experiences.
Yes, English is not just for exams, it is for connection.
Beautiful. English is for connection.
And sometimes for ordering coffee.
Very important too.
Especially Vietnamese coffee.
Especially Vietnamese coffee. Now, let's teach some useful phrases for meeting someone from another country. You can say, "Where are you from originally?"
You can also ask, what is your hometown like?
Another good question is, "What do you miss most about home?"
You can ask, what food do you recommend from your country?
Or, "What do you wish more people knew about your culture?"
That question is really good because it gives the person space to share something important.
Yes, it's much better than making assumptions.
Exactly.
Let's do a natural mini dialogue that listeners can repeat. Imagine you meet someone from Vietnam at a language exchange event.
Okay, let's do it.
Hi, I don't think we've met before. I'm Ava.
Hi, I'm Min. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Are you new here?
Yes, I'm quite new. I'm still getting used to everything.
How are you finding life here so far?
I like it. It's quieter than I expected, but people have been friendly.
That's good to hear. Where are you from originally?
I'm from Vietnam. I grew up near Hanoi.
Oh, interesting. What is Hanoi like?
It's historic, busy, and full of life. There are lakes, cafes, street food, and many motorbikes.
That sounds amazing. What do you miss most about home?
I miss the food, my family, Vietnamese coffee, and the energy of the streets.
I'd love to learn more about Vietnamese culture.
I'd be happy to tell you, and I'd love to learn more about British culture too.
Perfect. Maybe we can start with tea.
Or coffee.
Tea and coffee. That sounds like a good friendship.
Definitely.
And that's the end of today's conversation. Today, we practiced how to meet a new friend from Vietnam, how to ask polite questions, and how to compare cultures in a respectful way.
Remember these useful phrases. Where are you from originally? What is your hometown like? What do you miss most about home? How are you finding life here? And what do you wish more people knew about your culture?
Use these phrases in your next English conversation.
And don't wait until your English is perfect. Start small, speak kindly, and keep practicing.
Thank you for listening to Smart English Studio.
Learn smarter, speak better.
See you in the next lesson.